It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hey everybody, the NFL season's back. The Eagles face the Dallas Cowboys tonight at 8:20 p.m. on NBC. You're listening to the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast for NJ.com. I'm Cayden Steele, and joining me as always will be my co-host, Bob Brookover. We're going to break down specific matchups for this game, give you our prediction of what the score will be, whether the Eagles win, whether the Cowboys win, and then as the podcast progresses, we'll dive deeper into what we think this team will be this season. Will they be another Super Bowl contender this year, making it all the way back, or will they fall just short? And we'll also go over our individual predictions for certain players. Our offensive MVP, our defensive MVP, our top rookie, our surprise player as well. But first, you're listening to this podcast that is sponsored by Penco Tech. With two convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey, and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step by going to pencotech.edu. Let's get right into it. The biggest news of yesterday, Bob, was that Tanner McKee was ruled out for tonight's game against the Cowboys. We all saw this coming. He's got the fractured right thumb. That's why they went out and got Sam Howell. What do you think the Eagles do here, though? Do they risk it and just go with Sam Howell? Do they elevate Kyle McCord for this game? How do you think the Eagles approach this backup quarterback situation against the Cowboys?
I think they just go with Sam Howell. That's what I would do. I mean, if you're gonna have to play Kyle McCord in this game, you probably don't have much hope of winning it anyway. So I think my inclination would be just to make Sam Howell number 2, the backup tomorrow. He's on the roster. You don't have to do anything more than that. And you go with that. I mean, as the Cowboys are a team that comes to mind if you're getting to your second and third quarterbacks. Who was it last year? Cooper Rush, and who else came in for them? Trey Lance, was it?
Yeah, it was Trey Lance. Yep.
Yeah, that wasn't pretty. As I recall, I think I was deep in my head was in the computer writing it, whatever I was writing, because I didn't really need to pay any attention anymore when those guys came into the game because they were such blowouts. But that's my thought on that. Just go with Sam Howell. My one curiosity is just how bad is Tanner McKee, because if you watch him in practice, I mean, he's not even catching a football with he just keeps his right arm out of the way altogether. So he is. I don't know how quickly that thing's going to heal, but it looks obviously he's not playing game 1, and we'll see where things go from there.
Yeah,
and obviously you don't want him to play any of the games unless he's getting in cleanup time. So
no,
that's the whole purpose of the backup quarterback, hoping he never has to play.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe they do elevate Kyle McCord, but I mean, Bob, like your point, I mean, they might have a better chance of winning the game if, say the crazy situation happens and Hurts gets hurt and then Sam Howell gets hurt. They might be better off direct snapping it, to Saquon Barkley 15 times than they would be.
I saw that exact game unfold.
Yeah.
The Giants-Jets game in 23.
Wow.
They were down to DeVito, and I think that was Tommy DeVito's first game getting into a game, and they just. Let me go back and look this up quick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'll keep talking, but I have to look this up. How many times he ran the game? Because I later had a talk with Saquon about this game, and he was couldn't believe how many times he had carried the ball in that game, and like, we all got to be into this. Let's see, it was 36 times for 128 yards. So he only had 3.6 yards per carry, and then he caught it 3 more times, 36 times for 128 yards. And the Giants had the game won. Tommy DeVito did run for a touchdown, and they had the game won. And something happened at the end of the game that they blew the game. But yeah, I've seen that point. Back to the original point, I saw that game before, and you know what? It was the Giants' best strategy that day, and you very well could be right. It would be the Eagles' best strategy if that happened.
Yeah, and most likely it won't happen, but a lot of different things could happen in this game. So let's dive right into it. Obviously, the big news over the past week and the topic of conversation when it comes to this game has been the Micah Parsons trade from Dallas to Green Bay. They got rid of their star edge rusher. The Eagles are acting like, in the locker room, and it's what they have to do. That it's still the same. The game plan's a little bit different, but not much changes. Kenny Clark's this great player. I mean, and Kenny Clark has been a fine, more than a fine player in the NFL. But Dallas, without probably their best player in the entire roster, obviously there's some drama there. You wonder if they're distracted. But it's still a team that has Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, so they have some firepower. What is your outlook on this matchup? Does this heavily favor the Eagles, or is it a mistake to underestimate Dallas's roster without Parsons now?
I think it's a mistake to underestimate him for 2 reasons. One is that this Dallas team coming even without Micah Parsons, this Dallas team that came into Philadelphia last year and played the Eagles in Dallas did so without Dak Prescott. I forget whether CD was out both games. I know he was out the second game, but the fact that Dak was out, and they just it was the biggest margin of victory in 2 games in the history of the rivalry for the Eagles. They beat them like 66-13 or whatever it was on the 2 games combined. And the Cowboys, I'm sure, remember that, and it was an embarrassing thing for them. And they are going to be a much better offensive team, as Vic Fangio pointed out. They have 2 very good receivers now. They have 1 great receiver. CeeDee Lamb is a great receiver. He's as good as anybody on any team. And George Pickens is a really good receiver. So they are better offensively. They have some question marks along their offensive line now that used to, at one time, you'd always compare the Cowboys and Eagles as 2 of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and that's not true anymore. They still have a good guard in Tyler Smith, but they're weak across the full line now. But they're going to be a better offensive team, and they're going to at least be an offensive threat against a defense that has some question marks. So, it's going to matter. It's going to kind of, which way this game goes is going to be dependent on how well the Cowboys offense plays against an Eagles defense that we have questions about. I do think the Eagles are going to be able to move the ball against the Cowboys defense. Dante Fowler's still a decent pass rusher, but and the sum of the pass rushers is not horrible, but you lose Micah Parsons, and it's just Cam Jurgens no longer has to go up to the line of scrimmage and know where number 13 is, and the same for Jalen Hurts. So number 11, I'm sorry. The Eagles should be able to score and move the ball, and I think we'll get more into the deep of the season itself, but I think much of the Eagles' season is going to depend on does this offense become a great offense? We saw it could be a great offense in the postseason last year with the help of some big defensive plays and field position, but they also, were a potent, powerful offense, especially the last. I thought like the last 3 games they were a potent, powerful offense of the postseason. Certainly the last 2, but I see the Eagles winning this game, but I don't see it as being quite as easy as most Eagles fans probably think it's going to be.
No, I mean, and it's never that easy, especially week one when teams are rusty. It takes a while for things to get going. From an on-paper perspective, though, the Eagles are a lot better than Dallas. Dallas doesn't have the star talent other than really on offense with the 3 guys with Dak, CD, and George Pickens. Defensively, they lack depth. They lack really good starters too. And then offensive line, you already mentioned, Bob. Like Tyler Guyton's on track to play at left tackle. He had a really rough rookie season. Maybe he propels and becomes a good player, but that's a projection. And Terrence Steele hasn't been good in like a year. So the offensive line's weaker. I know they made the trade for Kenny Clark, and everyone's talking about it, including from the Eagle side, that what a run defender he is, how tough and physical, and he's a really good player, and that is fair. And they also have Osa Odigizua. Like they have a decent interior now, but the linebackers behind them are pretty unspectacular. Like Jack Sanborn is a solid backup in Chicago, but this is his first time really starting. Maris Leofo, like they have like an okay to like, I don't even know if it's okay. It might be like a little below mediocre at linebacker because Demarion Overshone is out and he probably won't be back. Or DeMarvion Overshone, he won't be back probably till like mid-season. And he was really good for them last year, but like I don't think they're going to great linebacker play. I think the secondary, it looks like Trayvon Diggs is on track to play. Deron Bland. Those guys are very opportunistic and they're good at taking the ball away, which Devontae Smith talked about in the locker room yesterday. And that is something to keep in mind. But, Jalen Hurts is good at protecting the ball. At least he was after week 4 and on last season. And in general, those guys are a little bit up and down in coverage. So like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith has the advantage there, and they will put up points against Dallas's defense. Like I think the Eagles are so much better. I'm not going to be the one that predicts a blowout because of the factor of a team potentially being rusty. But like to me, this Dallas team, Bob, is they're just a mess. Like if you told me today they finished last in the division, like I wouldn't be surprised because of the circus that it's become and the distraction element, and just for the fact that like honestly, like Jerry Jones hasn't done a good job of constructing this roster. Like this is a team that used to draft really well. They've missed on draft picks. Mozzie Smith, they haven't really like shored up the defensive line and offensive line the last couple of years, and I think Dallas is a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, the guy you mentioned it, I think they were really missing. I thought was becoming a really good player for him last year when he got hurt is Overshone. I thought he was really a guy who was starting to flash for them. It was his second season last year. And I not as much as they miss Micah Parsons, but they're going to miss him a lot because he was definitely a guy who was a playmaker for them, able to, he was a guy who could create sacks, from a linebacker position. He's a guy I liked a lot. But yeah, they're a bit of a mess until they prove otherwise. But like I said, if they can put up some points, that will be the key. The Eagles have a lot to prove on defense. So I'm eager to see that. They came out of the chute last year against the Packers, and I'm not saying that the Cowboys, well, offensively, except along the offensive line, the Packers offensive line, the Cowboys do still have talent. So yeah. And the Packers last year came out and put up big numbers, and to be honest, I'd rather have Dak than Jordan Love. I think if I was picking a quarterback, at least a healthy Dak. But that's a big thing for him. He didn't play. He hasn't played for a long time. So, but yeah, I mean, the Eagles should win this game. I mean, you might see panic, and for the second time after a Super Bowl, fans booing their home team after raising a Super Bowl banner. If the Eagles don't win this game, and they should win this game, but I don't think the Cowboys are going to come out and roll over.
No. Another factor, I mean, they can put up points. They have Cavante Turpin returning kicks. One kickoff return can change things. He is that dynamic. So offensively, they are a threat. Who knows how Brian Schottenheimer is going to call things? This is also his first game as a head coach, and that's a potential factor. Will he be in over his head? Like, people didn't love the hire. I mean, early in his career, I know, some people thought he would eventually get to this point, but it seemed like he was kind of getting off of that path, and no one thought he was going to be a viable head coaching candidate. But Jerry Jones kept him in-house, got rid of Mike McCarthy, and that'll be interesting to see how things play out. But, Bob, I really want to focus on the point that you just brought up a second ago about this defense. Right now, all indications are that Adoree Jackson's going to start outside Quinyon Mitchell, and that Sidney Brown is going to start next to Reed Blankenship as safety, especially with Andrew Makuba dealing with a hamstring injury late in camp and really probably being just a little too far behind right now to take over for that position. So you look at the defense as a whole, and with this matchup, do you expect to see a significant drop-off from what we saw last year? Or do you expect this to be a rusty start, maybe even similar to last year? It took this defense a little while to gel. Are we going to see the same thing?
Yeah, I could see that happening. I really could. Although I do think the X factor here is how well or the linebacker, how good is the linebacker duo of Jahad Campbell? I think that's the third spot where I think that's going to be the guy instead of Trotter after competing there, and Zach Bond. Zach Bond didn't really have much of a training camp this year. He was out for a good bulk of it. Will they be rusty? Will he be rusty coming in? Jahad Campbell, we saw that he can be a playmaker, but rookies can also be fooled by things in the NFL sometimes. So there's a question there too. We got two young edge rushers where the Eagles should dominate. Although the Cowboys do have a good offensive guard in Tyler Smith, and Cooper Beebe is not awful at center. But that's where you could see the interior of the Eagles defense really giving Dak trouble. And the game could turn on that, and they're going to need that. The Eagles are going to need their pass rush with a new secondary, some new looks in the secondary, and that'll go a long way toward whether the Cowboys can get going as an offense, whether the Eagles can get pressure up the middle, which they did consistently last year, and whether they can get it on the, which in turn that usually led to pressure also coming from the edges. I think that's a key element in how well the Eagles defense plays on opening night.
Yeah, and this is a major test for Nolan Smith and Jalen Son, because as the schedule progresses here, especially later in the season, they're going to face better offensive tackles. Like, no game in the NFL is easy, but this is against a weaker tackle group, and you would like to see them have a pretty good game, like to make their presence known, especially as pass rushers. I really don't question Nolan Smith against the run. He's tough. He sets the edge. I think Jalen's flashed against the run last year, but as pass rushers, they've had moments, but they haven't consistently done it for an entire season. And this would be an important game for them to get off on the right foot. They should take advantage of them, and they should have an impact on this game. And if they don't, and they're quiet, and they don't get a lot of pass rush, and so let's say Tyler Smith does a good enough job on Jalen Carter where he's not as disruptive, and Dak has all the time in the world, then I think there will be some concern going forward. So I have my eyes on those two guys. And then when it comes to Adoree and Sidney, it is interesting because, Bob, you've always made the good point of, the competition never ends, after training camp. That goes on into early in the season. And those guys have those positions right now. But if Adoree doesn't play well against Dallas and Sidney doesn't either, you wonder how fast Vic makes a change, whether that's, going to Jacorian Bennett at corner and then maybe putting Drew Makuba in for Sidney Brown at safety. I wonder how fast he does that if they do not have a good game against Dallas. So my eyes are really on the new secondary spots and then the edge rush tandem, and let's and see how they play. Um, is it fair to say though, even after all of our assessment, I think we're both taking the Eagles in this game over Dallas. Is that correct?
Yeah. Do we want to make our picks now and then move on? At the end, we'll tell the
Yeah.
people what we really think about the season.
Yeah. We can do that.
Sure, we can make our picks. We can make our picks now. I got the Eagles winning this game like 27-20. I think is what I picked in my. I did my individual. I redid my picks again the other day. I think I had the Eagles 27-20. I could see it being more than that, but I think the Eagles will put up some points, and maybe the Cowboys get a late touchdown to make it look closer than it actually was.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Dallas would put up some points. This Dallas defense, they got Matt Eberflus, and he's obviously been a successful defensive coordinator, but just the personnel to me is pretty rough. There's some good players here and there, but they really have no depth on the defensive line rotation as well. Obviously, the Eagles have an offensive line that has a potential weak spot of Landon Dickerson maybe not being 100%, and then Tyler Steen as a full-time starter. Maybe there is some opportunity where they give up some stuff, but overall, I do think the protection will be really good, and I think Jalen Hurts will have all day to throw. And I like the matchups for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and like I said earlier, I don't think Dallas will be able to stop the run too much because, yes, they have those two defensive tackles, but those guys are going to get worn out. Then you're going to have to put in guys in your rotation. And Saquon Barkley can wear you down. Eventually, he's going to hit some of those home runs, I believe, and especially with Dallas not having great linebackers, with Overshawn out. I'm going to go with the Eagles, probably similar to you, but I think they might put up even more points. I'll go 30 to 17. I think it'll be like a 13-point game. Dallas hangs in for a good while. It's not a complete blowout, but I just think the Eagles have a little too much firepower, more depth, and they're just a better team right now. But Bob, like you said, let's get into our real thoughts about how we feel about this team, because it's not just about this game. Obviously, this game is important, but big picture, let's start with just some of our predictions about the guys that we think will be the key integral parts of this team. Starting with our offensive MVP for the 2025 season, who's your guy?
I'm going to go with the quarterback instead of the running back. I think Jalen Hurts is about to play with just a confidence level that we haven't seen before from him. I do really believe that he has the perfect mentality for a guy who just won a Super Bowl. That he remains hungry, that he's forever hungry to win, and he's often talked about all he cares about is winning, and I honestly believe that is all he cares about. When his career is over, he's not going to be counting the number of passing yards, the number of rushing yards, number of passing TDs, the number of rushing TDs. He's going to be counting the number of rings. That's what's going to most define him. I don't know if he's going to get any more, but he's got one already, and he's still with a very talented team that figures to remain intact for at least another 2 or 3 years beyond this. So he's got some chances for more. And like I said, I feel like he's playing with another level of confidence that we have not seen before from Jalen Hurts. And I also think that teams are really going to be. I doing a story that's coming out tomorrow between the relationship between Larry Karras, Nick Sirianni's college coach, and Nick Sirianni. And at one point, Larry Karras said to me, "I'll tell you what, if I was the Los Angeles Rams or one of those other teams trying to beat the Eagles, I'd be spending all my time right now figuring out how I can stop Saquon Barkley." And I think a lot of teams are going to spend a lot of time saying, "How can we beat the Eagles?" The Eagles have addressed this some and said, Saquon in particular said, yeah, they tried to do that last year at times and couldn't. And then the Chiefs succeeded at it and still gave up 40 points. So some of them came from turnovers, but the Eagles were still putting up points and taking shots and finding ways to move the ball down the field and dominate the game. And I think we're going to see that, and I think Jalen Hurts is going to respond to it and end up being the offensive MVP this year. You can't forget that he has two great receivers and one of the at least top 10, if not higher, tight ends in the league. So he's still got a ton of weapons, and it should make for him have. I think he's going to have a career year. I really believe that.
Yeah, and if he does, I mean, you're not the only one in this thought. I saw Kyle Brandt on NFL Network saying this morning that Jalen Hurts was his MVP pick for the entire league. And if he does have a career year, I mean, this is a guy, if we remember, was second in MVP voting in 2022. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he wins MVP of the entire league this season, which one would help the Eagles be really good again and probably be back in Super Bowl contention. Two, I mean, it would probably shut up a lot of his critics who are still, non-believers or don't really have, discredit him at least, for not throwing for a ton of yards and, all those different things. But it's a real possibility. And I do think he's going to have a really good year. He's talked about being more confident. You can tell just the way he speaks. He doesn't sit at the podium anymore. He stands. Like, it's just the little things you can notice. He's more confident. There's more that he's taking control of. And I do think he'll have more reins of the offense. And because of how defenses probably play the Eagles, I mean, some of those defenses will probably try to play the Eagles like Kansas City did in the Super Bowl last year. And we saw how Jalen Hurts responded. It was not like he threw for 300, 400 yards, but he was efficient. He made big throws when it mattered. And I expect very similar things this season. And he's a good pick. But the guy that's going to be a benefactor of a better version of Jalen Hurts will be A.J. Brown. And he's my offensive MVP. He talked about at the beginning of the training camp that he wants to be the best wide receiver in the league. And if he stays healthy, it's possible. I mean, he got injured last season. The numbers didn't look as good because he missed some time. But he is you talk about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. But outside of those two guys, it's a really strong opinion of mine that he is the most talented wide receiver. He might have more natural talent or just as much as those guys as well. Like, he just doesn't put up the numbers because of how the offense is constructed. But 101, he beats man coverage more than any wide receiver in the NFL, or at least it feels that way. Like, he is so good in that area. He's such a difficult matchup because of his size and speed. And on go balls, it just feels like he pulls down everything, no matter how tight the catch is. A.J. Brown is a dominant player. He's good after the catch. He's good on slants. He does everything so well. And it helps when you have Saquon Barkley, when you have Devontae Smith, or when you have Dallas Goedert. Like, he's a part of a good offense as well. He creates things for other people as well. And I think we're going to see the best version of A.J. Brown. And will it be enough to win Offensive Player of the Year to surpass a guy like maybe Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson? I'm not sure about that, but he will be the offensive MVP of this team. And I do think Saquon will have another good year, but he might, take some more of the attention, and maybe the numbers won't look as good, but he'll still have that impact. But I do think A.J. Brown's going to explode this season. Let's move forward to the defense now. Our offensive picks: A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts. Defense, Bob. This is a changing defense. It's a new look defense. If I told you why is this defense elite again, and who is the biggest reason for why, who is it?
Yeah, to me, it comes down to the game itself. Comes down to the most important thing to me always is pressure up the middle, because that's the pressure that a quarterback sees immediately. That's the pressure that's immediately in his face, and it just seems like Jalen Carter. I did a thing, and who was the breakout player of the year, and it might seem an odd choice. The guy who finished second in the defensive rookie of the year voting, and was a second team All Pro in his second season, but it just seems like there's more there, and they rely on him so much. He barely comes off the field anymore. And he's just, the most dominating, and I'm aging myself here by saying this, the most dominating defensive tackle I ever saw in Eagles history was Jerome Brown. And I'm still not going to give Jalen Carter Jerome Brown status. Fletcher Cox was obviously great in his own right, but neither one of them, to me, compared reached the pinnacle of Jerome Brown, who unfortunately, right at the peak of his career, died in a car accident with his nephew in the car. But Jalen Carter has a chance to become Jerome Brown and be in that conversation with me. According, he's just a freak. He's a freak of nature. Aaron Donald is probably the best to ever play the position, and I think Jerome Brown could have been in that category if he kept playing. But I do see Jalen Carter possibly being in that Aaron Donald conversation, and it's year 3, and he's reached that point where the contract is coming, and ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I think we're going to see a lot of ka-chings this season from Jalen Carter.
Yeah, and it's been fun to watch him, and he saves the Eagles season last year, and it was a smart play too. Kind of like faked out one of the offensive linemen, came back inside, like showed off his instincts as well. Everyone thinks of Jalen Carter as this physical freak, and he is. I mean, when you just look at him, he has gifts that most people are not given. But he's also a very smart player. The sacks haven't really been there, but the pressures have. The sack numbers could skyrocket this season. Like if he was close to double digits, it wouldn't surprise me. He continually wins against double teams. He's a heck of a player, and that's a great pick. And it's hard to argue that he is not the most valuable player. Generally, it is really hard to argue. But I'm gonna throw in another name that has a chance to be that player. 1, because of his talent, and 2, because of the potential role that he's going to play. My MVP on defense for this year is going to be Cooper DeJean. For the fact that he could fill multiple roles very well. Like there is concerns at safety. There is concerns at outside corner. Cooper DeJean's played outside corner, nickel, and safety in training camp. And let's say there is a potential issue with Adoree Jackson or Sidney Brown, and then their replacements don't do that well, like Bennett and Makuba. Cooper DeJean could fill, potentially various roles and solve those problems. And he's a heck of a player. I mean, he's already the best nickel corner in football, and that position has become a lot more valuable with wide receivers, really good wide receivers lining up in the slot constantly, including CeeDee Lamb. We might see a lot in the slot on Thursday night. And he might be a guy that has some of those matchups, and he's going to have other difficult matchups throughout the season. And he is so sticky in coverage from the inside where he could win a lot of those matchups. He's really good against the run. And then it's just going back to he could fill multiple roles. He could be a really good outside corner. He could be a really good safety. He could be a really good nickel. He already is a really good nickel. And he could just solve so many problems for this defense. So there are a lot of concerns in the secondary. But when you have a guy like Cooper DeJean, it gives you confidence that they can figure things out. And if things don't work out, they probably will figure things out because he can fix it. And he's a really good player. I'm excited to see year 2. There's an all-pro ballot for nickel corners now. He should win that, He's that type of player. And let's see what happens with Cooper DeJean this year. Quinny Mitchell was another consideration I had as well. They might travel him. I think he's going to have a really good year. And it's funny when we talk about secondary concerns, but they have 2, potentially the best, duo of young cornerbacks in the NFL. So it'll be fun to watch. Bob, let's get into more young players now. Let's go with our rookie of the year, our standout rookie that we think is going to truly have an impact whether the team gets back to the Super Bowl or
not. Yeah, I think we're going to fall upon the same guy here.
Yeah.
It's hard not to pick Jahad Campbell in that group. But you never know. I mean, he's going to be the only rookie I think we see on the field a lot opening night. But that could change as the season goes on. There are other fascinating rookies on this roster. And the second round pick Drew Makuba, as you already mentioned, could he be in the starting lineup sooner rather than later? But Jahad Campbell was the guy who stood out in camp. He was the guy who, you know, I honestly do believe this, that if Jeremiah Trotter was competing for a job in a lot of places in the NFL this season, he would have locked it down easily.
Yeah.
Here he didn't. He wasn't able to do that, and it was probably more because of what Vic Fangio saw from Jahad Campbell than from what he saw from Jeremiah Trotter, because Trotter had a really, really good camp and a good preseason. But Campbell's got that freakish athletic ability. Now he's got to prove it. He's got to be smart and do the right things on the field. It'll be interesting to see, how he plays. And the Eagles, 2 straight years they've had the number second guy finished second in voting in Defensive Player of the Year with Jalen Carter two years ago, and then Quinyon last year with Cooper finishing fourth in that voting, and probably higher if he starts the season on the field and doesn't have to wait to get on the field. The other interesting guys here are Ty Robinson, how much he's in that defensive tackle rotation to start. I think he will be in it. And, Mac McWilliams, kind of crept just a little bit into the cornerback conversation toward the end of camp. I think still don't think we're going to see him a whole lot, but you never know. And we will see Smile Mondin, I think, on special teams. So there's, it's an interesting rookie class, but you'd have to be insane to choose anybody other than Jahad Campbell as your defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, and I'm not insane, so I'm gonna go with Jahad Campbell. You make a fair point. Like, gotta feel a little bad for Jeremiah Trotter Jr. If he's in another situation. I agree with you. He's probably a starter. The one thing that he doesn't have that Jahad Campbell has is just like elite athleticism and size, and like you can't really come up with that during training camp. So there's nothing Jeremiah Trotter Jr. could have done to win the job. I mean, Jahad Campbell just gives them a higher ceiling at the linebacker position. He's going to be fun to watch how they use him. Do they use him on the edge sometimes? Do they send him more? Do they blitz more because they have a guy like that who could be a weapon as a pass rusher? His closing speed is just fantastic. I think he's going to make a lot of big plays. Maybe there's some ups and downs, but he does have the biggest opportunity. And watching him next to Zach Bond, it's going to be a real joy to see how they cover up space. But Drew Makuba does have a shot, I will say. If he can come back and be a starter at some point early in the season, and if that ability that people talk about, his instincts and kind of just knowing where to be, and if he gets a ton of interceptions and he has a knack for returning them for touchdowns, maybe there's an argument there. But Drew Makuba is a little behind in the fact that he's hurt, and he has a long ways to go until I believe that he's going to surpass Jahad Campbell. The curveball is Mac McWilliams, though, potentially. I mean, let's say Ja'Cory Bennett doesn't work and Adoree Jackson doesn't work, and they go through so many options. Maybe they turn to Mac McWilliams some point this year, and he's a surprise player that gives them a solid starting play. And then, that would be an interesting conversation as well. But speaking of surprises, this is our last, pick for players, but we're gonna go surprise player of the year. Bob, who's your guy? Who's gonna just shock the world that no one's thinking it's gonna be? It could either be two things: a guy that's not expecting to make an impact, who has a huge impact, or a guy who's a starter, but it's gonna be even better than anyone even imagined.
Who is gonna be that guy? Let's go with. I'm going to go with. who I'm going to go with.
Who?
I'm gonna go with Sidney Brown. I think there are a lot of fans really are uh, down on the idea of Sidney Brown being a starter. And even my colleague Cayden Steele, I know you're right there, is convinced that Drew Makuba will be the starting safety at some point. But I think Sidney Brown's going to surprise us all and hold down that starting safety spot through the whole year and have a really solid year. That's going to be my prediction.
Yeah, he's definitely got a chance. And getting that week one start. I mean, plays well. He probably will hold on to the job. I mean, if he's a really productive player. I do have my doubts. I like the way Sidney Brown plays with passion. I yeah, love the way he talks to the locker room. You can just tell he cares about football a ton, but just needs to be a little more clean. Tackling wise, just be a little more fundamentally sound and just slow down and make the tackle, and then just be a little better in coverage. But I mean, he plays with a ton of passion. He's been with Vic for a couple years now, so you figure he knows the defense. And if he had a good year, maybe it wouldn't be the craziest thing. And he does have an opportunity to hold off Drew Makuba. He needs to play well the first few weeks, but I don't think it's a crazy pick. My guy is in the same draft class actually. It's not a guy that I think some people didn't know what he would be necessarily, but I think Tyler Steen's going to have a really good year. They lost Mekhi Becton, who was a really good run blocker last year at right guard, and people wondered if Tyler Steen was going to be ready to replace him. And early on in training camp, he was a little shaky. He struggled against Moro Joma, and it had me wondering, has he gotten better in pass protection? When Moro Joma started beating Landon Dickerson, though, kind of took that concern and lowered it definitely. And then throughout training camp, I mean, Tyler Steen got better against Moro Joma. And then Jalen Carter came back after missing a little bit, and he started playing well against Jalen Carter, and he looked good in pass protection. He looked good in run blocking. He had a nice run block in that Bengals game when he played, I believe, on the first series. So, Tyler Steen had a really good camp. Jeff Stoutland talked about that early in camp, he needed to see something out of him in practice. I think Steen later confirmed that he was talking about, he had some rough moments, and Jeff Stoutland just needed to really see him respond and fix some of the things that he was struggling with, and he did. And ever since then, I feel like Tyler Steen's been quiet at practice in a good way. And this offensive line, if Landon can stay healthy, they could be just as good as last year. And I wasn't sure if that was going to be true without Mekhi Becton, but maybe Tyler Steen could be even better, a more complete player than Mekhi Becton. And that is my prediction. I think there's a chance he's better than Mekhi Becton. And he ends up being a player that had a slow start to his career, kind of similar like Isaac Seumalo, but he ends up figuring things out, and he becomes a really good guard. I'm not sure if he's going to earn the honors, from around the NFL, but I think he's going to be an above average starter for this Eagles team. Do you like Tyler Steen as one, or?
Yeah, I think he's a good pick. I mean, he 2 years in a row he had a chance to win that starting right guard job, and he didn't. And this year he got to camp, and he now I'm not sure the competition was as high as it had been the previous 2 years, but there was never any doubt that he was going to win it, and
No.
and so he took it right from the start and made the position his. And Stoutland seems to really have a lot of confidence in him, and if Jeff Stoutland has confidence in you, I tend to have confidence in you.
I'll throw one more in there. I know I'm cheating a little bit, but I'll throw Jahan Dotson out there as well. If this passing game does pick up and it does evolve into this more pass happy type offense, which I'm not sure what happened, but if it does, he's looked a lot better in training camp. He looks more comfortable, which is to be expected after getting traded to the Eagles so late last summer. I think he's a pretty good player. I mean, and he has that first round status attached to his name, so he's probably never going to live up to that fully. But as your slot wide receiver, he brings a lot of dynamism, and I could see him having a pretty good year and see him getting paid after this year when he becomes a free agent. So I'll throw Jahan Dotson in there as well. This is the final thing that we're going to talk about today. We went through our player predictions. Now we're going to transition into our overall what we think is going to happen this year. Not from an individual perspective, but from a team perspective. How good are the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles going to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when you talk about the 2025 Eagles, I think you have to start with the 2025 Eagles schedule. It's a brutal one. It has 11 games against playoff teams, with the Commanders being the team they're playing twice. They're playing the NFC West and the NFC North. I'm sorry, and the AFC West. Um, and both those teams sent 3 teams to the playoffs last year. Um, we often talk about the gauntlet of a schedule, um, and a portion of it. But in the Eagles' case this year, the entire schedule is a gauntlet right out of the chute. With games against the Cowboys, not so much, especially after the Parsons trade, don't look nearly as intimidating, doesn't look nearly as daunting as maybe it did before that. But then you got to go to the Chiefs, who I think they might be a little bit eager to play the Eagles. And then the Rams, who I think they might be a little bit eager to play the Eagles. In fact, they've talked about that throughout the offseason. And then you go to the Bucs on almost the identical date you were there the last few years. And the Eagles, as we know, they've lost 4 of their last 5 in Tampa Bay. Not an easy task. And then the Broncos, who knows what the Broncos will be when they get to Philadelphia in Week 5. Before the schedule lets up a little bit with games 6, 7, and 8, 2 of the 3 of those against the Giants. But I still don't think the Giants are going to be ready to compete with the Eagles, but we'll see. And it doesn't get easier from there. It really doesn't. So I still think the Eagles are going to be really good. I still think the Eagles are actually going to win a division. I think they might not win it, and it never seems to work this way, where you schedule the division opponent, and then you get to the last game of the season, and it's for the division title. But with weeks 16 and 18, both against the Commanders, the first one in DC in December 20th, or whatever that awful stadium is, whatever town that's in. And in between, the Eagles got the Bills. Not an easy end of the season either. Commanders, Bills, Commanders. And I could see the Eagles losing the first 2 of those games, and then needing to win the last game of the season to win the division, and winning it and checking out with 12 wins. I could see that being the case, but this is not going to be an easy year for the Eagles, because they can talk all they want about, we don't want to use the word repeat, but other teams can use that the other way. They're the defending champions. Let's go play our best game. We have to play our best game to beat them, and they're going to get a lot of that this year.
They win the division, and I'll get your thoughts, then we'll end on my prediction. They win the division. After that, how far do they go? Early vibes from you on how far you think the Eagles will ultimately go?
I wrote about this a little bit. A lot of people were talking about, the Cowboys, they don't have to play Micah Parsons anymore twice a year, and even Saquon talked about it. No, but now they got to play the Packers possibly twice a year. They played them twice. Had to play them twice last year with Micah Parsons. And I kind of look at the history of the Packers. They have the really good quarterback in Brett Favre, and they get Reggie White, and they win a Super Bowl. And they have a really good quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and they draft Clay Matthews, and then they win a Super Bowl. But they have a really good quarterback in Jordan Love. I don't know if he's in the Favre-Rodgers stratosphere, but he's got a chance to be really good. And now they've added Micah Parsons to the mix. I can see the Eagles bowing to the Packers, who are another team who the Eagles do play on a Monday night in Green Bay. I can see the Packers being the roadblock that keeps the Eagles from getting the Super Bowl, maybe in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, it's real possible. I'm a little more skeptical of the Packers, though. I'm not as high on Jordan Love as other people. I think great arm talent, but pretty inconsistent, and that's with Matt LaFleur as his coach. I know he got injured last season. That played a factor. And at the end of the 2023 season, he was on a heater. So if that version of Jordan Love shows up with Micah Parsons on that defense now, potentially, still a little worried about the cornerbacks. I'm just not sure. I think they're a good team. They definitely taken another step, and obviously they're going all in. I'm not sure if they're ready to knock off the Eagles. I'm not predicting necessarily the Eagles to go back. I do think they have a decent chance of returning to the Super Bowl, but if they were to get dethroned, I think it would be in the NFC Championship game. That's how far I think they could still make it. It's hard to predict otherwise when you see how talented this team is. Things obviously change, and we'll see how things go. But if injuries don't really affect this team, I expect them to go on another deep run. But the team that could dethrone them, in my opinion, is still the Detroit Lions. I get they lost both coordinators, and that's a concern. But the offensive personnel, we talk about an Eagles defense, we're a little worried about how they're going to potentially come back this year and how good they're going to be with some of the holes. I mean, this is a Lions team that has Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery like a monster backfield. I think Jameson Williams is going to really break out as wide receiver too. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They drafted Isaac Tesla, this third-round wide receiver from Arkansas, who seems like he's going to be a steal. I mean, still have Jared Goff and Penei Sewell protecting him and a pretty good group of tackles there. And the interior offensive line is a little bit of a question, but the defense, they also get Aiden Hutchinson back. They patched up some of the secondary by getting DJ Reed. I think this Lions team is still going to be really, really good, and everyone's taking Green Bay over them right now, and I just don't know if I'm ready. And the Lions were banged up at the end of last season. They ended up getting throttled by the Commanders in the divisional round, but I still do wonder what happens if that Lions defense never gets banged up as it did. And I think we see that matchup this year. I think we see Eagles-Lions in the NFC Championship. And the Packers, I think, are still a year away. But that's all the time that we have today. Thank you for tuning in. And hopefully everyone enjoys the game. And keep reading our written content. We'll have you covered after the game, throughout the weekend probably with some content as well. So make sure to check out the written content. And we'll be back with a podcast early next week to wrap up the game and preview the Eagles versus the Chiefs. Everyone have a good day, and we'll catch you later.
Listen. That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. The sound of captivating electric performance, dynamic drive, and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined. The fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron.